The crumpled motel receipt, hidden in her purse, detonated 2 decades of our life together. It wasn't just the charge. It was the address. The one I knew too well from her late nights. I felt exposed, utterly broken. "It means nothing, Owen," she'd said. Her voice flat, devoid of warmth. Even as the truth stained everything we had built. The queen-sized mattress from the master bedroom was cumbersome. I wrestled it through the bedroom door, then carefully navigated the tight turns down the hallway and the stairs. Each step down was deliberate, a slow descent into what I had planned. The mattress scraped against the wall a few times, leaving faint marks that would be easily covered by paint. Not that it mattered anymore. I maneuvered it out the front door and dropped it squarely in the middle of the front lawn. The late afternoon sun beat down, making the springs feel warmer through the fabric. Next came the bed slats, a clatter of wood on the landing, followed by the side rails. The bedclothes, a duvet, and 2 pillows, felt strangely intimate, yet detached as I carried them. I tossed them onto the mattress, where they landed in a heap. These items, once central to our shared life, now looked alien under the open sky. The kitchen table followed, its wooden legs scuffing the concrete path. I set it beside the mattress. The living room throw rug, a floral pattern she had picked out years ago, came next. It was heavy with dust. I had not noticed until now. I spread it out near the table. The arrangement was precise, deliberate. I had prepared the signs over the last week. They were laminated, 18 by 24 inches, fixed to thin metal stands. I placed the first sign directly in front of the mattress. Its bold black text, printed on crisp white, announced the item, "Our marital bed." Beneath it, smaller lines detailed, "Location of Brenda's affair with Gary Olson. The master bedroom." Next to the text, a 17x 24-inch photograph showed Brenda and Gary Olson. Their faces were clear, their bodies intertwined. It was a still image from the surveillance footage I had obtained. Each detail was evident. The second sign went in front of the kitchen table. "Our kitchen table," the text explained. "Location of Brenda and Gary Olson's illicit lunch breaks, planning sessions, and secret embraces." Another identical photograph was affixed to this sign. The throw rug received its own sign. "Our living room rug." The description underneath stated, "Location of Brenda and Gary Olson's frequent evening rendezvous while I was at work." Again, the photographic evidence was clear, undeniable. A fifth sign, slightly larger, stood alone near the curb, facing the street. It read simply, "Gary Olson, Brenda's boss. The man who broke our home." No photo was attached to this one, just the stark identification. I checked my watch. 4:57 p.m. Everything was in place. The sun was still high, casting long shadows from the display across the lawn. The air was still. Only the distant hum of traffic disturbed the quiet. A neighbor, Mrs. Henderson from 2 houses down, walked her dog past the house. Her pace slowed, then halted. Her gaze moved from the mattress to the signs, then back again. Her dog tugged at the leash. Soon, 2 cars driving down our street slowed, then stopped. Their occupants stared. Other neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the unusual scene. The crowd grew. A silent, curious congregation. Their faces registered a mix of shock, confusion, and a quiet, almost morbid understanding. I stepped back, observing my work. The geometry of the setup was stark, undeniable. My heart hammered, a steady rhythmic thud against my ribs, but my hands were steady. I walked slowly up the path, opened the front door, and stepped inside. The cool air of the house enveloped me. I closed the door softly, the latch clicking with a finality that echoed the end of something much larger. I walked to the living room window, pulling the edge of the curtain slightly aside. From here, I had a clear view of the street. It was precisely 5 p.m. The traffic had begun to back up. A few more cars had pulled over. The cluster of people had grown. A familiar blue sedan rounded the corner. Brenda's car. It slowed immediately. Her brake lights flashed a moment longer than necessary. Her head, visible through the windshield, turned towards our lawn. The car crawled forward, then stopped entirely directly in front of the spectacle. I watched her through the glass. Her mouth opened slightly. Her eyes, even from this distance, seemed wide. Disbelieving, her hands remained on the steering wheel, knuckles white. A sound, faint but distinct, reached me even through the closed window. A choked gasp, then a sob. Her shoulders slumped. Her head dropped forward, resting on the steering wheel for a long moment. She lifted it again, her face streaked with tears. She cried out then. A raw sound of despair that cut through the quiet afternoon. It was a single, guttural sound, filled with a devastation I had anticipated. I held the curtain edge for a few more seconds, registering the full impact of her collapse. Then, slowly, deliberately, I let the fabric fall back into place, obscuring the view. The world outside, Brenda's world, was now hers alone to contend with. 13 years. Brenda and I had built a life on predictable routines, on the assumption that certain facts were immutable. 2 children, Chloe and Ethan, filled the house with their noise and demands. We had a mortgage, 2 cars, and a shared calendar. It was a structure, solid and understandable. The previous week, that structure had felt the first tremor, a subtle shift beneath its foundation, but one that I had filed away for later inspection. I was in a staff meeting, discussing quarterly projections, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. The display showed the school's number. I excused myself, stepping into the empty hallway. It was Miss Davies, the school nurse. Chloe, she explained, had a fever and was complaining of a stomachache. She needed to go home. I thanked Miss Davies, assuring her I was on my way. My mind, still half engaged with sales figures, began to recalibrate. My first thought was Brenda. I tried her office line. It rang 4 times before transferring to voicemail. Brenda Olson's office. A calm, professional voice stated, "Please leave a message." Olson, her boss. I tried her cell phone next. 3 rings, then voicemail. No personalized greeting, just the generic automated message. This was unusual. Brenda was meticulous about her phone, rarely letting a call go unanswered, especially from the school. A quiet unease began to settle in my chest, a physical sensation rather than an emotion. I returned to the meeting, briefly explained the situation, and gathered my things. The drive to Chloe's elementary school was short. The midday sun glinted off the passing cars. I ran through a mental list of possibilities for Brenda's unavailability. Client meeting? Doctor's appointment? None felt right. The fact remained. She was unreachable when her daughter needed her. Chloe was pale but managed a weak smile when she saw me. I signed her out, walked her to the car, and buckled her into the passenger seat. As I pulled into our driveway, something unexpected caught my eye. An unfamiliar silver Mercedes C-Class sedan was parked in the garage, neatly beside Brenda's minivan. It was not one of our cars. I had never seen it before. My mind, always seeking patterns, registered the anomaly immediately. It sat there, gleaming in the filtered light of the garage, an undeniable fact. "Stay here for a minute, sweetie," I told Chloe, keeping my voice even. "Looks like the exterminator's truck is in the way. I need to see what's going on." She nodded, leaning her head against the headrest, too sick to question. I got out of my car, closing the door quietly. The garage door was still open, the light from outside illuminating the new addition. The back of the Mercedes faced me. The license plate was from out of state. My gaze shifted to the side door leading into the house, which stood slightly ajar. I returned to the car. All right, Chloe. We're going to Grandma Martha's. She can take care of you there. My mother, Martha Miller, lived 10 minutes away. She was always reliable, always there. The drive was quiet. Chloe dozed. I focused on the road, my thoughts churning. The silver car. The open door. Brenda's silence. The pieces were starting to connect, not into a picture, but into a stark, undeniable diagram. After dropping Chloe off at Martha's, explaining only that Brenda was tied up at work and Chloe had a stomach bug, I drove back to my office. The meeting was long over. My desk was clear. I sat down, my mind working through the implications. It was no longer a question of suspicion. It was a question of evidence. I needed proof, concrete and irrefutable. I picked up the phone and dialed Dave Jensen. Dave worked in our security equipment division. He was a good man, pragmatic, and he understood the technical aspects of surveillance better than anyone I knew. Dave, I said when he answered. Owen here. I need to talk to you about some security equipment. Something sensitive. Can you meet me now? Owen? Sure. Be right there. 10 minutes. His voice was unburdened by curiosity, a professional courtesy I appreciated. When Dave arrived, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I laid it out for him, factual, devoid of emotion. Brenda's having an affair, I stated, watching his face for any reaction. He just nodded slowly. With her boss, Gary Olson. I found his car in my garage today. Dave's expression remained neutral, a testament to his professionalism. I need help. Discreet help. I need to document this. Everything. What are we looking for? Dave asked, leaning forward slightly. Miniature cameras. Microphones. Something I can place without detection, and a voice-activated recorder for her car. Something that won't drain the battery, that can operate for long stretches. I felt no shame, only a grim determination. This was about facts, about evidence. Dave considered this, stroking his chin. Beta line stuff. We've got some prototypes in the lab. Wireless cams. Tiny. Microphones that fit under a dashboard. Sound activated. I can get you a voice-activated unit for the car. Minimal power draw. It'll run for weeks. Good, I said. Can you get them ready? I can pick them up tomorrow. Consider it done, Owen. Dave stood up. I'll have a package ready for you by midday. Discreet. Thank you, Dave, I replied. The plan had begun. That evening, I retrieved Chloe from my mother's house. Martha had fed her chicken soup and read her a story. Chloe seemed a little better, though still subdued. We arrived home just as Brenda was setting the table for dinner. The smell of lasagna filled the kitchen. How's Chloe? Brenda asked, not looking at me. Her back turned as she ladled sauce. Better. Martha took good care of her, I replied. My voice even. I watched her for a flicker of something, but her movements were practiced, smooth. I'm so sorry, Owen, she said, finally turning. Her eyes met mine briefly, then darted away. My phone just died. Must have accidentally switched it off in my purse. I just found it. She offered a small, apologetic shrug. Her tone was casual, practiced. The explanation felt thin, translucent, but I offered no challenge. I simply nodded. During dinner, Brenda tried to make small talk about her day, about a new project at work. I responded in monosyllables. Later, as we prepared for bed, she approached me. Are you all right, Owen? You seem quiet. Just tired, I mumbled, turning away. Long day. Feel a little under the weather, actually. I feigned a yawn, rubbing my temples. It was a simple excuse, one that allowed me to avoid any physical intimacy. She didn't press the issue, merely nodded and turned off her bedside lamp. Sleep did not come easily to me. The next day, as promised, Dave Jensen had the equipment ready. It was a small, unmarked box. "Everything you asked for," he said, keeping his voice low. "Beta line cams, tiny. They transmit to a secure server. Mics are voice-activated. And the car recorder, it's under 2 inches, magnetic. Stick it to the chassis, or hide it under the seat. Runs on its own power source for about a month." I thanked him, and we parted ways. That afternoon, while Brenda was at work and Chloe and Ethan were at school, I began the installation. I started in the master bedroom. The miniature wireless cameras were indeed small, no larger than a thimble. I found discreet vantage points, tucked behind a loose panel on the headboard, nestled within a decorative vase on the dresser, and carefully positioned behind a picture frame on the nightstand. The voice-activated microphones, even smaller, were hidden beneath the mattress, taped inside a curtain hem, and secured under the lip of the bedside table. I moved to the kitchen. One camera went behind the microwave, another inside a ceramic fruit bowl, its lens peeking through a gap. Microphones were placed beneath the counter, taped to the underside of a shelf, and hidden within the radio. The living room followed a similar pattern. A camera behind the television, one in a potted plant, and a third nestled in the bookshelf. Microphones were everywhere, under sofa cushions, taped to the base of lamps, and inside a hollowed-out book. Each placement was deliberate, designed for optimal coverage without detection. The wireless signals were strong, a green light indicating full connectivity. The final piece was the car recorder. I waited until Brenda had parked her minivan in the driveway, then slipped outside. With a small screwdriver, I managed to lift the passenger seat's carpet just enough to slide the tiny magnetic device underneath. It clicked into place, invisible. I tested the voice activation by speaking a few words. A small red light pulsed once, then vanished. Back inside, I connected the wireless receiver to my laptop. The software was straightforward. I opened the application and watched the screens flicker to life, showing live feeds from each camera. I spoke into the air, and the audio levels on the microphone monitors jumped. Everything was functional. The system worked. The next morning, I began the daily monitoring. I would access the server from my office, reviewing the night's recordings, then checking the day's feed during my lunch break. For the first few days, there was nothing unusual. Kids going to school, Brenda leaving for work, the cleaning lady on Tuesdays. My suspicion, which had sharpened into certainty, now had to await corroboration. Then, 4 days after installation, the patterns began to emerge. Each afternoon, around 2:30 p.m., Brenda's minivan would pull into the driveway. A silver Mercedes C-Class would follow minutes later. Gary Olson. The camera in the living room showed them entering, their movements becoming less formal, more familiar. The recordings confirmed their regular afternoon liaisons. I watched. First, the living room. They would sit on the couch, talking, then touching. Then, they would move to the kitchen, where the camera documented stolen kisses, whispered conversations over cups of coffee. And finally, the master bedroom. The footage was clinical, damning. It confirmed my findings, painting a precise picture of betrayal. The recordings captured the specific times they arrived, the duration of their encounters, the exact moments. I watched their faces, the quiet intimacies, the shared laughter, the clandestine movements. There was no doubt. I meticulously archived every video file, every audio snippet. Each piece of evidence was cataloged by date, time, and location, stored on an encrypted external hard drive. The raw data accumulated, a digital testament to the unraveling of my marriage. The recordings continued to accumulate. Every day, the hard drive grew heavier with evidence. I watched them in the master bedroom, the kitchen, and the living room. It was not just the physical acts, it was the easy conversation, the shared laughter, the quiet intimacies that spoke of a sustained emotional connection. The pattern was consistent, 2 to 3 times a week, usually in the late afternoon, following Brenda's supposed work schedule. The details were clinical, precise. Every whispered word, Every touch was documented. One evening, I found myself alone with Brenda's purse, sitting on the kitchen counter. A small, crumpled piece of paper poked out from a side pocket. It was a receipt from Elegant Gems, a local jewelry store. The date on it was 3 months prior to my discovery of the affair. My eyes scanned the item listed. A pearl necklace. A substantial sum. This was not a gift from me. The next morning, I called Elegant Gems. "Hello," I said, adopting a slightly deeper tone. "This is Gary Olson. I purchased a pearl necklace a few months back, on the date on receipt. I wanted to confirm the details for my records. It was for Brenda, you see." There was a brief pause on the other end. "One moment, Mr. Olson," the sales associate replied, her voice polite. After a rustling of papers, she returned. "Yes, I see the record here. A classic freshwater pearl necklace, paid for in full. Is there anything else I can help you with regarding this purchase?" "No, that's all, thank you." I hung up. The confirmation was simple, direct. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The betrayal had deeper roots than I had initially understood. It wasn't a recent transgression. It had been ongoing for months, perhaps longer. Next, I turned to our joint bank accounts. I retrieved the statements for the past 6 months, laying them out on my desk. I focused on Brenda's debit card transactions and ATM withdrawals. I noticed a subtle but definite increase in cash withdrawals, particularly on days when the surveillance indicated she was meeting Gary. Small amounts, $20, $40, sometimes $100. But adding up. Unexplained. Not for groceries. Not for bills. I made notes, documenting each withdrawal. The time had come to seek professional counsel. I called Hank, a divorce attorney I knew through a colleague. His reputation was for being methodical, thorough, and dispassionate. We met at his office. I laid out the situation, presenting him with a preliminary dossier. The motel receipt, the jewelry store confirmation, the initial bank statement, anomalies. Hank listened, nodding occasionally. His office was neat, functional, with rows of leather-bound books. "Owen," he said, after I finished, "this is a strong start, but we need to protect your assets now. This is a game of strategy, not emotion." He leaned forward. "First, open a new bank account, solely in your name. Immediately redirect your direct deposit salary to that new account. We need to wall off your incoming funds." "Understood," I said. "Second," Hank continued, "given the duration and depth of this affair, we should consider a home equity line of credit. Secure those funds while you still have access. It's a contingency, a safety net. If Brenda tries to drain joint accounts, you'll have liquidity." Right. The practicality of it appealed to me. It was a logical defense. "Third," he advised, "open a P.O. box. All sensitive mail related to the divorce, legal documents, bank statements for your new account. Have it sent there. You don't want Brenda intercepting anything." Good idea. I could see the logic in each step. It was like building a fortress, brick by brick. "Finally," Hank said, "continue collecting your evidence. The more specific, the more irrefutable, the better. Photos, videos, audio, dates, times, locations. Keep it all organized. We'll build a case that leaves no room for doubt." I spent the next few days executing Hank's instructions. I opened a new bank account at a different institution, discreetly changed my direct deposit information at work, and applied for the home equity line of credit. The bank approved it quickly. I rented a small P.O. box at the local post office, changing mailing addresses for my new accounts and Hank's correspondence. Each action was precise, devoid of sentiment, driven by the cold calculus of preparation. I returned to Hank's office with an updated dossier, already thicker than the first. He reviewed it, his expression unreadable, then nodded. "Good," he said. Very good. We're building a formidable case, Owen. With the financial preparations in place and the surveillance data consistently accumulating, the next logical step became clear. Gary Olson had a wife, Michelle Olson. She deserved to know the truth. This was not about revenge, not yet, but about the dissemination of facts. Obtaining Michelle's contact information required a careful approach. I called Gary's office, posing as a mutual acquaintance trying to reach Michelle about a forgotten item from a recent social event. The receptionist, after a moment of hesitation, provided a cell phone number. She's usually reachable on this, she said. I thanked her and disconnected. I dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a polite, slightly harried voice answered. Hello. This is Michelle. Michelle. My name is Owen Miller, I stated, keeping my voice level, factual. My wife, Brenda, works with your husband, Gary. I need to speak with you about something important, something concerning both our families. There was a beat of silence on the line, a sharp intake of breath. Oh? Her voice was tight with immediate concern. What is it, Mr. Miller? It's not something I can discuss over the phone, Mrs. Olson. It's sensitive. It impacts our respective marriages. I believe it would be best if we could meet in person. For coffee, perhaps? I suggested a neutral public location. Another pause. All right, she said, her voice dropping. When and where? We agreed on a coffee shop halfway between our homes for that afternoon. The urgency in my voice, devoid of overt emotion, must have conveyed the gravity of the situation. Before the meeting, I prepared a selection of the most damning evidence. I didn't want to overwhelm her, just to provide the undeniable facts. This included a short video compilation of Gary and Brenda in our master bedroom, a series of explicit still photographs from various locations in my house, and audio recordings of their conversations in Brenda's car. Each file was labeled with dates and times. I loaded it all onto a new, encrypted thumb drive. The coffee shop was bustling. Michelle Olson was already there, seated at a small table by the window. She was a woman in her early 40s, with neat, dark hair and intelligent eyes. She looked apprehensive. Michelle, I greeted her, extending my hand. She shook it, her grip surprisingly firm. Owen, she replied. What's this about? Her voice was quiet, controlled. I didn't waste time. Michelle, I'm going to show you something that will be difficult to see. But you deserve to know. I placed my laptop on the table, opened the file, and turned the screen towards her. I hit play on the first video. She watched the screen, her expression shifting from curiosity to confusion, then to dawning horror. Her breath hitched. Her hand flew to her mouth. The video played for only a minute, showing Gary and Brenda in an unmistakable embrace. I then clicked through the photographs. Brenda and Gary in my kitchen, in my living room, in my bed. The images were stark, undeniable. Michelle let out a soft cry, a sound of profound distress. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. She stared at the screen, her face crumpling. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, this can't be. It's real, Michelle, I said, my voice steady. I have weeks of this. Video, audio, dates, times. It's been happening in my home, for months. She finally looked up, her eyes wide and wet. Gary. He's been so distant. Late nights. Business trips I couldn't verify. I thought it was work stress. Her voice cracked. He's been spending money too. Unexplained withdrawals. I just put it down to his new clients. I found similar financial discrepancies on Brenda's side, I confirmed. I hired a divorce attorney, Hank. He's advising me to protect my assets. This isn't just about infidelity. It's about financial deception and the damage done to our families. Michelle nodded slowly, wiping a tear from her cheek. I will confront him, and I'm filing for divorce. Immediately. Her voice, though pained, held a new resolve. I believe we should coordinate our legal actions, I suggested. It could strengthen both our cases. Two separate incidents, but against the same parties. Yes, she agreed, her gaze fixed on the laptop screen. Yes, we should. Do you? Do you have copies of this evidence? I'll need it for my attorney. I slid the thumb drive across the table. Everything is on here. Encrypted, with clear instructions on how to access. It's a complete dossier. She picked it up, clutching it tightly. Our mutual pain, once solitary, now had a shared focal point. Sometimes the unraveling of one life exposes the threads of another. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. I recounted the meeting with Michelle Olsen to Hank, detailing her shock and her subsequent resolve to confront Gary and file for divorce. Hank listened, his expression thoughtful. Excellent, Owen, Hank said, nodding slowly. Strategic collaboration. Michelle's separate legal action will corroborate your claims and apply additional pressure. It's an effective tactic when dealing with such blatant infidelity. We moved on to the next steps. Timing is critical now, Hank continued. We need to serve Brenda with the divorce papers at the most opportune moment. I also advise filing for a restraining order and an injunction to freeze joint assets as soon as the papers are served. This prevents her from trying to move funds or liquidate anything. I have a plan for the timing, I told him, my voice flat. I intend to make the affair public. Before the papers are served. A very public display. I watched for his reaction. Hank's eyebrows rose slightly, but he showed no surprise. He simply waited for me to elaborate. I'll display the evidence. On our front lawn. The marital bed, the kitchen table, the living room rug, each with signs detailing the specific acts, the locations, and who was involved, along with photographic proof. Hank paused, considering. On your private property, you say? Yes. In front of the house. Visible from the street. Legally, Owen, displaying the truth on your own property, especially as evidence in a pending divorce case, falls within your rights. It's a bold move, but within the bounds of what's permissible, as long as it's factual and not purely defamatory without basis. He tapped his pen on his notepad. It will certainly get her attention, and Gary's. And it will set a strong precedent for your case regarding her conduct. Over the next few days, Hank and I finalized the divorce petition. We detailed my requests. Sole physical custody of Chloe and Ethan. Considering Brenda's demonstrated lack of judgment and parental neglect during the affair. A fair division of assets, heavily weighted by her infidelity and financial impropriety, and no spousal support for Brenda. The evidence I had gathered made my case strong, irrefutable. While Hank handled the legal paperwork, I focused on the public display. I drafted the specific wording for each sign. Precision was key. Our marital bed, location of Brenda's affair with Gary Olsen, the master bedroom. Our kitchen table. Location of Brenda and Gary Olsen's illicit lunch breaks, planning sessions, and secret embraces. Our living room rug. Location of Brenda and Gary Olsen's frequent evening rendezvous while I was at work. And the final, succinct identifying sign, Gary Olsen, Brenda's boss, the man who broke our home. I then went to a professional printer. I explained I needed large, high-quality photo prints, 17x 24 inches, of specific images for a project. They didn't ask questions. I selected the most impactful and explicit photos from my archive. Images of Brenda and Gary in various compromising positions. Their faces clearly visible. Their actions undeniable. I ensured the prints were clear, sharp, leaving nothing to the imagination. My planning extended to the exact time and day for the display. It needed to be late afternoon, around 5 o'clock. This would maximize visibility, catching people returning home from work and creating a bottleneck of traffic, ensuring the widest possible audience. It was also Brenda's usual arrival time. The element of surprise was crucial. I confirmed with Hank that all legal documents were prepared for immediate filing. The divorce petition, the restraining order, the injunction, everything would be initiated immediately after the display. The public spectacle would precede the legal hammer. The morning of the planned display, I called Hank one last time. "Everything is set," I told him. "I'll be putting the display out around 4:30 p.m. Brenda should arrive around 5 p.m. Papers can be filed shortly after that." "Understood, Owen," Hank replied. "The process server is on standby. Once the display is confirmed, we move. Legally, you are within your rights to do this on your own property. Just be prepared for the fallout. It will be significant." I hung up the phone. I had been preparing for weeks. The emotional aftermath was not something I could ignore, but it was also not something that would deter me. The emotional cost of her betrayal had already been paid. This was merely the inevitable consequence. The morning was clear and cool, a typical Midwestern fall day. I started early, well before Brenda would typically return from work, ensuring no one would see the preparations. The children were at school, oblivious. I began by disassembling the queen-sized bed frame, carefully removing the mattress, the slats, and the side rails. Each piece was carried down the stairs, out the front door, and placed deliberately on the front lawn. The weight of the mattress felt like the weight of 13 years, heavy and cumbersome. The kitchen table and the living room throw rug followed. I arranged them precisely, leaving enough space for clear viewing from the street. Then came the signs. I had prepared 5 in total, each one detailed and unforgiving. The first, in front of the mattress, read, "Our marital bed." Location of Brenda Miller's affair with Gary Olson, the master bedroom. Beneath it, a 17x 24-inch photograph of Brenda and Gary, undeniable in their actions, was affixed. The second sign went with the kitchen table. "Our kitchen table." Location of Brenda Miller and Gary Olson's illicit lunch breaks, planning sessions, and secret embraces. Again, a large, explicit photograph left no room for interpretation. The third, for the rug. "Our living room rug." Location of Brenda Miller and Gary Olson's frequent evening rendezvous while I was at work. Another photo. The fourth sign, positioned slightly in front, named Gary Olson as Brenda's boss and the man who broke our home. By 4:30 p.m., everything was in place. The display was stark, a tableau of betrayal. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn. A few neighbors, walking dogs or checking mailboxes, paused, their steps slowing to a halt. Their eyes widened, their expressions a mix of disbelief and morbid curiosity. Cars driving down the street slowed. Some stopped, their occupants staring, pointing. Cell phones appeared, snapping pictures, recording videos. The small, quiet street was becoming a stage. I checked my watch. 4:57 p.m. Almost time. I walked calmly into the house, closing the front door behind me. I moved to the living room window, pulling back a corner of the curtain. From this vantage point, I could see the entire scene. The crowd had grown, forming a silent semicircle around the display. At precisely 5 p.m., a familiar blue minivan rounded the corner, Brenda's car. It approached the house, and I watched through the glass as her speed decreased dramatically. Her head turned, her gaze fixed on the spectacle on the lawn. The car crawled forward, then stopped dead in the street, directly in front of the exposed furniture and the damning signs. Her face, even from a distance, registered the impact. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Her hands, I imagined, clenched the steering wheel. She leaned forward, as if to get a clearer view, but there was nothing unclear about it. The large, explicit photos were undeniable. The detailed text was precise. Then, I heard it. Even through the closed window. A raw, guttural cry. A sound of profound devastation. Her shoulders slumped. Her head dropped, resting on the steering wheel. Her body shook with sobs. She lifted her head again. Her face pale, streaked with tears. Her eyes, wide and unfocused, scanned the display, then lifted, finding mine through the front window. For a brief, stark moment, our gazes locked. Her face was a mask of utter despair, humiliation, and a dawning understanding of the consequence. I held her gaze for a few more seconds, registering the full extent of her public collapse. Then, calmly, deliberately, I let the curtain fall, severing the connection. The direct observation was over. Immediately, I pulled out my phone and dialed Hank. "She's here," I stated. My voice devoid of triumph, merely factual. "The display is fully visible. She's seen it." "Understood, Owen," Hank replied, his voice equally calm. "We're filing the divorce petition, the injunction, and the custody request now. The process server is on his way." As Hank initiated the legal filings, I moved through the house, systematically. The old locks would be replaced. The garage code, the alarm code. Everything would be changed. The era of shared access was over. The calls started within minutes of me pulling the curtain shut. Brenda's number flashed on my phone, repeatedly. I let it ring. Then came the texts, a flurry of question marks, exclamation points, and incoherent pleas. I blocked her number. Next, the emails. "Owen, what have you done? What is this? Please, I need to understand. Call me." They were frantic, desperate, devoid of the calm deception she had maintained for months. I read them, registered them, and then deleted them without reply. There was nothing to explain. The facts were laid out on the lawn. Later that evening, I received a call from Michelle. Her voice was strained, but her tone was firm. "I confronted Gary," she said. "He had nothing to say. I showed him your evidence. He just stood there." She had already contacted her attorney. She informed me she had filed for divorce, citing adultery and emotional distress. "And I've contacted Human Resources at Mitchell Price and Olson Realty," she added. "They're investigating." They seemed quite concerned. The fallout from Michelle's call to HR was swift and decisive. Within 48 hours, an official letter arrived at my P.O. box, confirming what I had expected. Gary Olson had been summarily terminated from his position as a senior partner at Mitchell Price and Olson Realty. The reason stated, gross misconduct, violation of company ethics policy, and behavior bringing disrepute to the firm. The scandal, amplified by the very public display I had orchestrated, was too damaging for them to ignore. A separate, shorter letter arrived a day later. Brenda, too, had been terminated from her administrative position at the same firm. Her involvement in the affair, particularly with a senior partner, was deemed a breach of workplace conduct and a contributing factor to the firm's damaged reputation. The job she had prioritized over her family, the job that provided the cover for her infidelity, was now gone. Explaining the situation to Chloe and Ethan was the hardest part. I waited until after dinner, when Ethan, at 8, was still awake, but Chloe, 12, could grasp more of the nuances. "Mommy and Daddy are having some very grown-up problems," I began, my voice steady. "Mommy made some choices that have hurt our family. Because of those choices, she won't be living with us anymore." I avoided specific details of the affair, focusing instead on the consequence of her choices. "It's not your fault, either of you. This is an adult problem, but I want you both to know that I love you more than anything. That will never change. And I will always be here for you. Chloe looked at me, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and confusion. Ethan just stared at his plate. They asked few questions, seemingly absorbing the weight of the news. Brenda's parents called me, their voices filled with disappointment and sadness. Owen, we just don't understand. Her mother, Carol, said. Brenda, she's always been so level-headed. I listened, offered no defense of Brenda, and simply confirmed the divorce proceedings. There was nothing more to say. In the midst of the chaos, support came from unexpected quarters. My mother, Martha, called every day, offering to help with the children, bringing over meals, or simply listening. You did what you had to do, Owen, she told me, her voice firm. Dave Jensen, my colleague, also checked in. Heard things got pretty loud, he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. If you need anything, security or otherwise, let me know. The story of the public display, complete with blurry cell phone photos from neighbors, quickly made its way to local media. A segment on the evening news, a blurb in the local paper. It was briefly the talk of the town. My name was mentioned. Brenda's, Gary's. The humiliation was total, absolute. My focus shifted entirely to the children. Providing a stable and secure environment became my paramount objective. I started the arduous process of rebuilding. A single-parent household. New routines, new responsibilities. The old life, with its predictable routines and shared calendar, was gone. A new, uncharted future had begun. The day of the divorce hearing arrived, a crisp Tuesday morning in early November. I remember the cold biting at my skin as I walked into the county courthouse, the sterile hum of fluorescent lights overhead, casting a pallid glow on the polished linoleum floors. Brenda was already seated at the petitioner's table with her attorney, a woman named Miss Davies, whose expression was as unyielding as her dark suit. Brenda herself looked diminished, her usually vibrant hair muted, her shoulders slumped. She kept her eyes fixed on the tabletop, meticulously avoiding my gaze. I took my place beside Hank, feeling the weight of the moment, but also a strange, quiet sense of clarity. Hank, ever composed, had his briefcases neatly arranged, overflowing with binders. He leaned in, whispered, "We're ready, Owen." The evidence speaks for itself. When our turn came, he began his presentation, his voice clear and devoid of theatricality. He started with a concise overview of our 13-year marriage, the existence of our 2 children, Chloe and Ethan, and the period when Brenda's behavior shifted. He spoke of the increasing absences, the vague excuses, the growing distance that had initiated my own investigation. Then, he moved to the heart of the matter, the evidence. He called up specific video clips on the courtroom monitor, carefully curated from the extensive footage I had collected. The images flickered. Brenda and Gary Olson in our master bedroom, the intimate setting of our most private space laid bare for public consumption. Then, the kitchen, where they shared whispers and casual touches, followed by the living room, their rendezvous on the very rug where our children had played. Hank narrated each piece, providing the date, the precise time, and the context, ensuring the judge understood the depth and duration of the deception. He then played select audio recordings from Brenda's car, capturing snippets of their conversations, their shared laughter, undeniable proof of their illicit relationship. The court, particularly the judge, a woman with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, reviewed the documented patterns of infidelity and financial impropriety with a somber, unblinking gaze. The facts, presented in such a methodical, undeniable fashion, left no room for interpretation. Hank also presented the detailed bank statements, highlighting the unexplained cash withdrawals Brenda had made, linking them to the dates of her liaisons with Gary Olson. The financial impropriety, intertwined with the infidelity, painted a comprehensive picture of betrayal. Brenda's counsel, Miss Davies, attempted to counter, arguing for Brenda's privacy rights, and suggesting that the surveillance itself was a violation. She spoke of Brenda's emotional distress and the public humiliation she had endured. But the weight of the evidence, the sheer volume and specificity of it, proving the long-standing nature of the affair and the financial misdeeds, overshadowed any counter-argument. The explicit nature of the photographs, especially those taken in our marital home, rendered any claims of privacy moot, as the acts themselves had occurred in spaces previously considered sacred. Brenda sat silently beside her lawyer, her face pale, her eyes cast down, her shoulders hunched in a posture of resignation. She offered no personal rebuttal, no explanation for her actions. There was none that could convincingly stand against the mountain of evidence. Her silence was a tacit admission. The judge, after a brief recess for deliberation, delivered her ruling. Her voice was quiet, firm, betraying no personal emotion. She addressed the matter of the children first, emphasizing their best interests, citing Brenda's sustained parental neglect during the course of the affair, as evidenced by the dates and times she was with Gary instead of being available for her children, and the potential for emotional instability due to her actions. The judge granted me full physical and legal custody of Chloe and Ethan. A small, almost imperceptible wave of relief washed over me. Not of triumph, but of profound certainty that my children's future stability was secured. Brenda was granted minimal supervised visitation rights, contingent on psychological evaluation, and subject to ongoing review by a court-appointed family therapist. It was a consequence she had entirely engineered herself. The court then moved to the division of assets, recognizing my consistent financial contributions, my efforts to maintain the household, and the emotional and financial distress caused by Brenda's infidelity. The judge awarded me the marital home, ensuring the children could remain in their familiar environment. Most of the joint assets, including our savings and investments, were also allocated to my control, a decision heavily influenced by the evidence of Brenda's unexplained withdrawals and the overall financial impact of her choices. Brenda received a significantly reduced financial settlement, enough to establish herself elsewhere, but substantially less than she might have received in a no-fault divorce. Spousal support was limited to a short-term provisional period, designed solely to assist her in transitioning, rather than an ongoing entitlement. Finally, the judge ordered Brenda to pay a portion of my legal fees, a final, tangible acknowledgement of her culpability and the costs her actions had imposed. The legal process, which had consumed weeks of my life and considerable emotional and financial resources, had reached its logical, if painful, conclusion. The facts, methodically gathered and presented, had prevailed.